Okay, so I have a friend. I forgot to put this. So I have a friend that lives local to me, and she's my quilting friend. And so, which we don't, it's kind of funny because we actually don't quilt together. We go out to lunch a couple of times a month together. Anyway, well, I was telling her about, so the place that I take my quilts in to get them long arm quilted, she actually takes her quilts in and she actually rents their machine, and she quilts her own quilts. Anyway, I was in there one day picking up a quilt, and I was talking to the gal that does my quilting on my quilts, and she was telling me about this little quilt shop that's about 45 minutes from where I live and out in the middle of nowhere. Like, you go through this little town, and when I say little, it is like a teeny tiny town. You go through this little town and you go out of town like 4 miles, and kind of out in the middle of nowhere, she has this quilt shop, and it's adjacent to her house. So she has her house, but then she has this building, and she's put this quilt shop in there. And she does, I think she does mail order too. She, anyway, talking to her, she says that's what's kept her going during the pandemic, is when the pandemic hit and she couldn't have her shop open. She says her online sales just went through the roof. And so she did very, very well for herself during the pandemic. Anyway, so my quilty friend and I decided to go on a little field trip. And we decided to go and find this little quilt shop, and then go out to lunch in the town and stuff. Well, while we were out, we went through this town. We noticed there was another quilt shop right in town. So this tiny little town had two places that we got to go to shop for fabric. And I'm not going to show you the fabric I bought. It was just background fabric that I can use, just yardage that I could use for backgrounds when I make a quilt. And so, anyways, and that's basically all I got. Well, anyway, in this little shop, the first little shop that we went to, they have these little cups. Isn't that cute? And it's enamel. It's like an enamel cup, and it was only $3. And so I thought that would be so cute to make a little pin cushion to go on the top of that. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I thought it was really cute. Anyway, so then we left that shop, went and had lunch at this burger drive-in place. Oh, this place is they have the best hamburgers. It's just a little dive of a place, but I had hamburgers there before. It's kind of when we traveled through this little town, we always stopped and had a hamburger. So anyway, we went and had lunch, and then we went over to the other quilt store. And at that one, I again bought backing or background fabric for quilts. But they had these little buttons there. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show them to you. And I just thought they were so cute. And they were like 6 for $1. So I bought these little buttons. And there's a little pair of scissors and a little iron. And this one is a thimble and a little sewing machine. And then just 2 other little buttons. So that's what I got. Anyway, okay, so I have been quilting, working on some quilts. The first thing I'm going to show you is this one. This is my April block from the Prim, Lori Holt Prim quilt. So I finished it. Love it. Love how it's coming out. So it pretty much matches the cross stitch one, except for the shirt is not the same color, but on the cross stitch one I tried to make the flowers the same color as these. Right. So the other thing I made is, okay, so if you watched Jeanette and Heather, they, I'm going to look up the name of I cannot believe that I cannot remember their Flosstube channel. It is Crafty Cottage Stitches. Ah, there we go. Crafty Cottage Stitches. Anyway, if you watch their last video, they announced that they are doing another social, SEW. They did the strawberry social, and now they're doing the Star Spangled social. And I will put the hashtag below so that you can go over and follow the hashtag. So anyway, so I made the project bag last weekend that I showed you already. And then they showed this little mini quilt that they made. So I decided to make me one. This is mine. And this is actually free online. It's on Lori Holt's blog. And so this is how mine turned out. I still need to figure out some background fabric for it, and I need to get it quilted. I have a couple of things I need to get quilted. So anyway, there's my block, or my mini quilt that I made. And I did this last weekend. I was kind of busy sewing last weekend because I made the project bag, I made this, and I made something else I'm going to show you. So I was chatting with Jeanette, and she sent me a text of this little pin pillow that looked like a flag. And I thought, I'm going to try to make that. So look what I made. I actually made 2 of them last weekend. So the stars are actually white buttons that you sew on here. So I still need to sew the white buttons on, and then I'm going to make these into little pillows. So anyway, it's what I've been working on for the Star Spangled Social. All right, so in my last video, I mentioned that I am doing a quilt along with Crafty Cottage Stitchers. That throws me. Crafty Cottage Stitchers, Jeanette and Heather. And so if you go back into their last video, Heather shows the fabric she chose for this quilt along, and the video before that, Jeanette shows the fabric she is using, and in my last video, I show you the fabric I'm using. So this is the quilt along we're doing. It's Summerville by Thimble Blossoms. We're actually doing, you can do any of the villages, any of the villes that you want. There is an Autumnville, Winterville, Springville, and Summerville, and I'm doing the Summerville one. So yeah, join us in our quilt along. This is going to be a lot of fun. There is a hashtag for it. I think it's called Quiltyville QAL, and I'll put the hashtag below. So I have started cutting out my fabric. So I'm just going to show you. I started cutting out my fabric for it. And there's more of my fabric. I don't want to tip it too much because these are all labeled, because you've got to keep them labeled when you have all these little pieces. So I'm ready to start that. I'll start that next weekend. The other thing I've been working on, quilting wise, is this. So a few years ago, and when I say a few, probably 5 years ago, my daughter and I decided we were going to make this quilt. And we decided we were going to make it very scrappy. I didn't have any, at this time, I didn't have any Lori Holt fabric. Or if I did, very little. But I had a ton of scraps. So my daughter and I decided we were going to get together. We started off like once a week. We'd get together and sew a block or two. And then it kind of died off, and we were doing it maybe once every 2 weeks. And anyway, and it took us like 2 years to sew all of the blocks. And we sewed all of the blocks that's in this book and also I had bought her add-on blocks, which are now available in her Vintage Farm Girl 2 book, or her Farm Girl Vintage 2 book. Anyway, so mine are all scraps. I had 60 blocks. When I was completely done, I had 60 blocks done. And we finished these a couple of years ago. And they've just been sitting in a tote. And I thought, you know what? I need to pull them out. And I need to decide what I'm going to do with them. And I did all 12-inch blocks. So if I used all 60 blocks in a 12-inch quilt, I would have a huge king size, even bigger quilt. So I went through all my blocks and I divided them up actually into 3 categories. So I've decided I'm going to make 3 quilts out of all these blocks. And I want the settings of them different, which when I say settings, you go through, this is a setting of how you want your quilt to look. So and then you place them where you want them. That is setting them. And I thought about using this setting, and I might for one of them, but that is a lot of flying geese. Yeah, I'm pretty sure those are flying geese. That's how she did them. And flying geese are not my friends. So I don't know if I'm going to use this setting or not. But I was perusing Facebook groups one night, and someone had posted a setting they had done using her version. She had done her version of these. I thought I really liked that. So I went through my blocks and I separated them into categories, and I pulled out all the blocks that were farm related. So there's cooking blocks in here, there's animal blocks, there's a house, there's a barn. Sorry. And I decided to finally pull them out and make them into a quilt. So I pulled out 20 blocks. I'm not going to show you them all. I'm just going to show you some. I think this is 10 of them. There's the cows. Like I said, we used all scraps. Everything from this was from scraps from other quilts, random fat quarter bundles that a fat quarter that I had that didn't match anything else or whatever. So that was all just all scraps. So I picked out all the ones that could be farm related, or this kind. This was I live in a farming area, and I see a lot of flags out in front of barns and farmers' yards and stuff. So I put that one in there. We got a pig. There's the bee. Farmhouse cooking, you bake and cook. Plant zinnias, flowers. So anyway, there's 12 of them. So in this on this Facebook page or this person that had posted hers, she had just put random strips of fabric around to use as sashing. So that's what I'm in the process of doing, is just putting the sashing around them, just using, again, scraps. I actually had 2-inch strips that I had cut a whole bunch of my just scrap fabric into 2-inch strips to make a quilt, and so I just pulled out some of those and sewed them on. So I'm in the process. I have 10 more to put. I have the strips on 2 sides of them. I just need to finish putting the strips on, and then I will put them into a quilt. I'll make them into a quilt. And so maybe by my next video, I will have the quilt top finished and I can show it to you. Okay, the only other thing I want to show you that is quilting related is I have a granddaughter who is 9. She will be 10 in June. And back when she was 7, she come up to me, she says, Nana, when I turn 8 years old, will you teach me how to make a quilt? And of course, I said, yes, I will. So her very first quilt she made, I had a charm pack, and a charm pack is just a pack of 5-inch squares. And so her first quilt she made was a doll quilt, and I just took out those 5-inch charm packs and just showed her how to sew them all together. And so she made a doll quilt. And so anyway, she did that, and then she didn't really show any more interest until last summer, right after she turned 9 years old. And that was just about the same time as Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop was finishing up had just finished up not too long before that, the Ultimate Beginner's Quilt, I think is what it was called. And basically what it was is 9 blocks, 9 12-inch blocks. And in each block, she showed you a different quilting skill to make a quilt. So I'm going to suggest this. If you are interested in starting to make a quilt, I would go onto Fat Quarter Shop's blog. I think it's called Jolly Jabber. Go into their blog, find the tutorial for the Ultimate Beginner's Quilt. There's videos and great instructions. And when you're done with that, you will know all of the basics of how to make a quilt. Anyway, so my granddaughter came over to spend the night with me, and I says, would you like to make a bigger quilt? One that maybe you could cover up with while you're sitting on the couch watching TV or something? And she's like, yeah. She was all excited. So I showed her what we were going to make, and she says, okay. So I told her, I says, you get to pick all the fabric that you want for your quilt. So I let her go into my fabric stash, and she picked out the fabric for her quilt. So remember, she's 9 years old. So when I show you this quilt, I want you to remember that. But we would do, her attention span was not that long, so we would do 1 block and she'd be done. And then the next time she'd come over, we'd do another block and then she'd be done. And I did all the cutting for her because I don't want her using the rotary cutter. But other than that, she did everything herself. She picked out the color, the fabric. She picked out the placement of the fabric in each square. She sewed it all together, and she did all the ironing. And the only thing she did not do is the cutting. Anyway, so she just here and there she's done some blocks. And not last weekend, but the weekend before, I asked if she'd like to come stay the night with me, and she said yes. So she came over, and I says, how about if we work on your quilt? And she had 2 blocks to do before all the blocks would be completed. So she got all excited, and she says, yes, let's do it. Well, not only did she get those 2 blocks completed, she got the entire top of the quilt completed. That's how excited she was to finish this quilt. And so here is her quilt. Step back so you can see the whole thing. So this is her quilt that she made. And like I said, I thought we'd only, when I said, do you want to work on your quilt? I thought she would say, yeah, and then we'd do one block and she would be done. Nope. She finished, let's see what blocks we did. We did this one and this one. So she did those 2 blocks, and then she sewed all the sashing on and the border. So it's all done. This is ready to be quilted. And I'm going to actually, well, I was going to quilt it for her. Then she was over here yesterday, and I said, should we make the backing for your quilt? And I went in and kind of just went through some of my flannel and picked out some colors that were in the quilt. And yesterday we made the backing for her quilt. I think I'm gonna have to stand up for this one too. We made the backing for her quilt. So we just sewed some strips of, I had 5 different of the same print, and she picked 3 to go on the back of her quilt. So I thought, at first I said, I'll quilt it for you. And I thought, no, she has done, sorry, I gotta get back in my chair. She has done this whole quilt, basically herself. So I thought, I will get it all pinned together, and next time she comes over, she's going to quilt her own quilt. So anyway, and then I will probably do the binding for her because that's a little bit more complicated. So anyway, I think that's it. I think that's it. So 3 videos. I'm sorry. It was 3 videos. I have had some people tell me that they actually like how I've kind of, even though I'm doing all my videos at the same time, there's 3 different parts, so they can watch one part at one time and then maybe come back and watch part 2 and then part 3. They also like how I'm kind of dividing up the parts. So like part 1 is maybe what I've been stitching on, part 2 is my plans, and then part 3 is my quilting, anyway. So hopefully you will see this in the next, obviously you're not going to see it today, but within the next couple of days of me filming this, this will be up for your viewing pleasure. So, I think that's it. Oh, I want to show you that. See that? That's on my Lori Hole fabric. I had it in a cabinet that was over there, and I had all the fat quarter bundles, wrapped up individually, how they came, and I decided to break up the fat quarter bundles, and I divided them by color. And so I figured if I did that, I'd probably be more apt to pull out of them to use them rather than them just sitting like these. I don't pull from them to make stuff. So I figured I still have some fat quarter bundles, like this one is the Christmas one, and I want to do a Christmas quilt, so I didn't want to pull it apart. This one is her new line, Flea Market, and I didn't want to pull it apart quite yet because I think I might want to use that entire bundle for a quilt. This one is Patriotic, and I didn't want to pull it apart because I want to do a patriotic quilt with it. And then this one is Granny Chic Fat Quarter Bundle, and that is my absolute favorite line she has come out with so far. And so I want to do a quilt using that Fat Quarter Bundle. But I figured any other quilts that I make, I could just pull out of these and use them to make a quilt. And then, and And this right here is all of Lori Holt's fabrics. Also, these are fabrics that are background colors, so I can use them in backgrounds of a quilt. But I like this idea so much. I am going to do it with a couple of other of my favorite fabric designers and break up some of these fat quarter bundles. So I'm, because a lot of like Lori Holt, a lot of designers will pretty much use the same colors in their fabrics. So all their fabrics are kind of mix and match. So like all Lori Holt's fabrics, you could take all of her fabric that she's ever come out with, take them all the fat quarter bundles apart, separate them by color, and they all match. So yeah, so you can use them, and other designers do the same thing. So I think I'm going to do the same thing with these and use these baskets. These baskets come from Walmart, very inexpensive. Um, and my friend Jeanette told me about them, so I went over to Walmart, and the first time I went, they had 5. I bought all of them, and then I was over there the other day, and they had 6, and I bought all of them. So I think they're going to work out perfect. But so anyway, I had to move my Lori Holt fabric over here because it didn't fit where I had it before. All right, so I will see you in a couple of weeks and show you all of my fun stuff I've been working on and give you a stitching update. So see you later. Have a good day.